Hi, this is Steve Ferreira, host of Navigate B2B on FreightWaves TV. Come inside with me and we'll watch how a great importer negotiates service contracts and uses the operational infrastructure of the Port of Miami to further their business. And good day and welcome to Real Container Experts of Miami. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking this is Navigate B2B, but we're going to definitely compete with that other real show, because down here at the Port of Miami today, on my tour of great ports and infrastructures and beneficial cargo owners and importers, got a heck of a show today. Really, really impressive to talk about Containergeddon and how it's impacting various stakeholders in the container shipping game. Now, Containergeddon, it's kind of coming at you, but we have the solution. We have the personnel, we have the expertise on camera here at the Port of Miami. And I'm so pleased to introduce one of the important stakeholders in the importer-exporter community down here in Miami, Mr. Michael Naw, the Vice President of Merchandising for City Furniture in, I want to say Hialeah, Florida, or Miami. Michael, welcome to Navigate B2B.
Thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Wow, it's a pleasure. Now, where is City based, actually?
We're based in Tamarack, which is west of Fort Lauderdale in Broward County.
I see. And is that corporate offices as well as distribution centers? Tell us a little bit about the background of City.
Yeah, that's our main corporate headquarters is there, attached, large distribution center, one of two. We'll be opening up another distribution center in Miami in the coming months, as well as Tampa next year.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And I think that one of the things that we've seen through this incredible period of Containergeddon, it's kind of like our Super Bowl, isn't it, with the Ever Given and the Suez Canal. So we've really got a lot of interesting dynamics happening in the container shipping industry. And you're right at the forefront, at City, with not only being one of the more prolific importers of furniture, but also in the fact that you have a dominant tendency here at the Port of Miami where a lot of your cargo comes through. So let's talk a little bit about from the start. So tell us a little bit about when did this phenomena of Containergeddon first hit? I know when the pandemic hit, was there any aha moment, at corporate where you said to yourself, okay, this is it. We got to kind of prepare ourselves.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing for us was, about a year ago this time, there was 3 weeks when retail was shut down and things were really uneasy across the country. But what our company did was really lean into our website, lean into an appointment strategy, and lean into chat sales. And what we saw right away was the stay-at-home economy was real. And so we started to get inklings of, hey, we had slowed things down because no one knew what was going on. And we were kind of waiting to see. But our aggressiveness, I would say, and what took years and years of preparation to be set up, with an awesome website, best-in-class website, best-in-class sales team, gave us the insight to say, oh, this is coming back. So we started to push in May and saying, hey, let's ramp things back up. And we had suppliers and we had ocean carriers saying, you sure? You sure? And so we had a nice little head start there. But then by June, the stay-at-home economy and really all the big boxes started to see, whether it was home or whether it was different segments of retail, started to see consumer goods was going to be really important in the COVID time. And so we've been fighting the challenge ever since. We have really good partners, which has been our big competitive advantage. Is years-long relationships with the ocean carriers, a really good standing with the Port of Miami. I'm so happy to be here, and some other ports in the state of Florida as well.
Wow, that's fantastic. And I think you've given it such a great ability to introduce and spotlight City. And what you just said alone there is really, I think, what we want to convey to our audience, that up close and personal nature of what you're doing. And for those of you just joining us, you're watching Steve Ferreira, I'm CEO of Ocean Audit, host of Navigate B2B. And today my special guest is Michael Naw, Vice President of Merchandising at City Furniture. Michael, let's get into a little specifics. One thing I'm just incredibly the success that you had going from Q1 2020 of about 1,300 containers to Q1 2021 of 2,000 in a remote workforce. where you're not able to travel to your suppliers, where there's all types of havoc taking place, where furniture's in the spotlight. How did you pull it off? That's extraordinary growth.
Yeah, it's months in the making. It really is. This goes back to after the summer of last year where we were lining things up. And as a retailer, we've been focused on growth pre-COVID. So there's the COVID aspect of the lift in homes furnishings, but there's also City Furniture's preparation for growth in new retail stores opening, in new markets, growth on the web. I mentioned chat sales earlier. I mean, just humongous, extraordinary growth there as well, all online. So it has been communication with the suppliers at a level using Zoom, where everyone's now so comfortable with Zoom, right, that we're just in touch with these guys. Our touch points, our supply chain execution was at a level that we felt great with. We had senior team buy-in, really critical as well.
Wait, are you talking about the Zoom with the vendors in Asia?
Yeah, of course.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So tell me more.
Yeah. So I mean, in the past, you would have maybe a conference call with a supplier once a quarter, and no face-to-face, and it's at odd times at night, and you were saying, and it's just difficult to execute. Now, and whether it's domestic or import, we still have a really robust domestic supply chain as well, with product coming from within the state of Florida. We have mattresses from Mississippi, we have upholstery coming, and we bring some products from California as well. The Zoom and the cadence of what we picked up, and everyone running to it, and whether it's our CEO, our president, our CMO, everyone jumping on these calls at 9 o'clock at night, Zoom face-to-face with folks in Asia, China, and Vietnam, and other countries as well, and just starting to lay out our plans and saying, hey, we know that there's a bump right now, but here's our plans, laying it out 12, 24 months, and giving that strategic vision. That's
so hell of an impressive opportunity. How did you manage it with the operational staff at City, the guys and gals that are tasked with, the infrastructure and getting the containers? I mean, with the remote work here, yeah, how was that handled? Because obviously you've got a fine-tuned engine running on both sides of the pond. So tell me about the operations here. How did you pick up the ball and just kind of accelerate that through remote distancing? Yeah, so I would say on the first side, we're using carrier direct contracts and NVOs on top of that to get incremental volume in. And the team is set up. We work with DHL International Supply Chain, their ISC division, as a forwarder. And then we have great folks based down here, years of experience in handling inbound volume. And then what we were also focused on was, hey, we're ramping this up. You spoke about the numbers earlier. We're ramping this up. How do we communicate with our operations team to make sure that we can bring everything in, and make sure we don't have any buildup of containers? And we've done a good job there. Michael, let me ask you a question. Was it difficult to transition? I read an article. I mean, you and I talked off camera. We talked about how ocean freight's gone mainstream, right, in the media, Washington Post, New York Times. And I read an article in the Post, the Washington Post, and it talked about just in general some of the big box retailers. I think they were talking about Lazy Boy, and they said that the Lazy Boy mix went, or another retailer went from a 25% mix of online. They used to be 15% online. Now they're at 25%. Yeah. And that in some ways the customer's experience now is to kind of look online and then kind of come in and try a chair and make sure it's right for them, as opposed to going through the store. Have you seen any difference in the, obviously you're selling a ton of sectionals and sofas and merchandising, but have you seen any difference in behavior of the end user? Because from our perspective, we hear a lot about the online purchases. Oh, Amazon did that, or Amazon did that. But you're such a great regional leader in furniture. What's the customer experience like during the pandemic?
So what we've done, and this is, again, it's pandemic focused, but it's also just years and years of work. When I joined the company 8 years ago, we had 3 people working on our website. Now we have over 30 folks dedicated to our website and making that a world-class experience. But the way we see the website is, sure, our percent of sales has gone up like everyone else, and we're doing things to continue to press on that percentage and try and grow it. But we also see the website as the front door for the customer. So the customer's so much more well educated now. They're coming in, they pre-shopped you. A lot of times they'll come into the store, they have their phone and they'll say, take me to this section. I want to go sit on it and make sure it's good.
Really?
I mean, that's 4 out of 5 customers pre-shopped you online before they come in. So that's a critical experience as well. And then also the website is such a critical tool on the back end. So after purchase, can I go to your website, see the status of my order, see day of order tracking on our website that we have where we can give you a time window, and we also do push notifications. So the website's so critical. What we've done over the years is we've gotten the product line to the point where we've extended it and we have all those offerings that the customer wants, but we also have the content. So we built an in-house photo studio where we're getting content for social media every day, and the customers are loving it. We've taken our catalogs and that I think are some of the best catalogs in the entire industry, and we digitize them and put them on the website. So the customer is being inspired on our website, and then our in-store experience is second to none as well. We opened a store last year in Doral, not too far from here, right. And we have a store in Midtown Miami. We have stores across South Florida, west coast of Florida, Orlando, and we'll be moving to Tampa next year. The in-store experience is what we call our Generation 3. So our Generation 3 store has cafe, wine bar, in-store, home accents gallery. So we're not just selling you furniture anymore. We have wall decor, tabletop, and the expansive line there for folks to revisit, increase our traffic. Right. So that website is one experience, but when they come into the store, we want world-class experience as well. It works together.
I love the mix of that because obviously, somebody comes in and they say like, I looked at the site, hey, by the way, I do personally, between you and I, is there any chance I can get one of those marble desks?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But what I love about it is when somebody comes in with that mindset, like, I think I'm a very discerning consumer. I'd come in and see that, and then, you've got this great kind of explosive experience, and I think as we reopen, it becomes more like just the consumer's bells and whistles in their own mind go off. Hey, this is a place I want to hang out with. This is a place I want to experience, great stewardship at, right? To have my buying experience be that much accelerated. But I want to ask you about the fact I think you're in a unique niche. At the Port of Miami here, you have less exposure with your container cargo that doesn't have to come in through LA. So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but in some ways, is it kind of the best of both worlds for you that you've had this great experience being able to come in directly into Miami as opposed to avoiding some of the chokeholds that we're experiencing? Comment a little bit about your choice on port of entry. Please.
Yeah. Port of Miami is our number one port by far. Super critical to our success. Really a very accommodative relationship. And a strategic relationship with the Port of Miami to continue to grow. And I think, we were talking about all the press before. All the press before the Ever Given was about what's going on the West Coast. You got 40 vessels sitting off LAX or Port of Long Beach. And we were definitely fortunate to not bear some of that. But the inbound cargo overall coming into the United States, whether it's on the West Coast or on the East Coast, is at astronomical levels. And so we've seen some hiccups there, but we're really, really appreciative of Port of Miami and what we've been able to build here over so many years. It's been awesome.
I think it's definitely an advantage. I mean, I look at the port structure. I talked recently to the port director at Port of New York and New Jersey. They've got a different syntax and synergy than what LA is doing, and Miami has its own, wonderful nuances, as a gateway to the world. And I think when you look at that, it's just amazing that you've got this great segue where the cargo just flows and you don't have to worry about the ports getting bunched up. However, I do want to ask you, a good friend of mine is a guy named John Monroe, and John is an expert in evaluating lead times and booking lead times from Asia to here. John is saying, and I tend to agree, that from cradle to grave, kind of booking to delivery, especially on an East Coast all-water service, you might be looking at 9 to 12-week lead time. Can you comment a little bit about maybe, if you make a booking in Vietnam today, might you see that cargo in 3 months? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I would say so. So to start, supplier lead times have definitely increased as you're asking these suppliers overseas to ramp up with their raw materials and labor. So we've definitely increased lead times there. As far as from booking to shipment and arrival, I think that maybe not quite that long, but I think before we would say, 10 days before sailing, you'd have to have bookings finalized. Right now we're out, we could be out 4 and 5 weeks. And then the on the water time potentially increased a little bit with longer dwell times and so on and so forth. So we've definitely seen it, maybe not quite to 12 weeks, but it's definitely been extended by, I would say, 2 weeks from a year ago in that process at least.
One of the things, Michael, that I'm seeing, and I went out on a limb, and somebody told me, Steve, never forecast because, you always look bad if it doesn't come true, but I love to forecast. And I think that one of the things that my numbers are telling me is that in July, August, September 2021, I'm going out on a limb and saying that overall for the US imports, there's going to be 100,000 more TEUs even than last year. Looking within your your microcosm of your excellent work, do you see a bump up this summer in terms of the volume?
We certainly do. I think that we're going to see an increase year over year. We can see the open orders, so we have a good idea that that's where we're going to be. We also have new stores opening this summer, one in Altamont, in Orlando area. So we have, there's one thing to talk about comp growth, and then it's new store growth, new market growth, and then growth on the web. So we kind of look at it in those 3 segments. We see the business going really well. Florida real estate across the country, and home still being really critical to folks as we work through COVID and more vaccines come. We're waiting to kind of see how the shifts come, but we're really locked in and think that the business is trending in the right direction.
One of the things that I was really impressed with, and again, now I've been watching the container trade for 30 years, and I know that when we had the China 301 tariffs a couple years ago and the Trump tariffs, smart people were already moving a bit away from China. Now, I think Citi's done an outstanding job, sourcing in different countries. Talk to me a little bit about, tell the audience please a little bit about your mix. Is it fair to say that you've got Vietnam, Malaysia, Thailand, some China? Could you discern a little bit of a foundation in terms of your origin country mix?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been diversifying for years before the Trump tariffs. It's been a strategy of ours. And like I said, the United States is a really good percentage of our mix as well. And we own our own factory in Mississippi, Kevin Charles, that we bring in product from. But there's been interesting things to come over the last couple of years. We're doing more imports from Mexico than we ever had. You mentioned some of the other countries. Vietnam has been really critical for us. In the homes furnishings industry, we had an anti-dumping case on wooden bedroom 15, 20 years ago that led us to Vietnam earlier. And so we had a stronghold in Vietnam even before the Trump tariffs. And so a natural, like you saw in the apparel industry and other industries, a natural gravitation towards Vietnam, but we're diversifying across the board and seeing some other countries come up as well. We're doing more now out of India than we ever have.
No kidding. Really?
So we're seeing it as an opportunity to continue to diversify in different strengths out of all these different origins.
I think that's fascinating. Williams-Sonoma did the same thing years ago. They're experts in marketing and getting the product diversification. It's tough to move a factory. It's tough to get a good vendor, right? That your quality control people love and trust, and that you want to represent Citi when it goes to the consumer. So I think you've done a remarkable job in that front. We have a few minutes left. I want to shift over to kind of obviously there's really 2 sides of the equation. We've been talking a lot about the flow and container getting and products and your growth. But to get there, we need a ship, we need a boat, right? We need a rate, we need a plan. And so being inside of ocean freight contract negotiations for as many years as I have, and I know that's part of one of your strong suits, give me a little bit, please give the audience a little bit of an overview and how unique this year's negotiations are versus years gone by for ocean freight contracting?
Yeah. So I mean, it's funny you bring this up. We've been on a 5-year journey to really iron out our ocean freight negotiation process. Typically, we start in March. We get a group of folks. We go to TPM in Long Beach. We kick off our negotiations there, get an understanding, work out for over a 2-month time period. We have several rounds of bidding. We're networking through the entire process, and we've kind of ironed this out. We got a long document, and then comes this year, and 5 years of planning, and you can say, I think some of this stuff we're going to continue to keep the principles, but we're not going to hold out until April. Typically we'd be holding out to right now, and we'd be considering we wouldn't have signed anything yet. Whereas right now we've signed all of our contracts, and we did so extremely early. And really, I think it's the faith in the business and where we saw what we were doing and where it was trending to say we need to lock in capacity sooner. Typically, we're holding off to the last minute. This year, we signed a bunch sooner, and we have great partners, and so we have some of our top carriers. We've been working with these guys for 15, 20 years, so we can have really honest, forthright conversations, and we can go from there. And then the one other thing I would throw in for what we did was I wasn't on an island in these decisions. We're talking to the senior management, talking to our CEO and saying, hey, my gut is telling me we need to lock in stuff right now because I see this getting worse. Do you see this getting worse? And we talk to folks all around the country and overseas and say, yeah, it's getting worse. The capacity problems are going to persist, and sure enough, they have.
Well, what I like about what you said is a good friend of mine, Stephanie Loomis at Vanguard, told me, and she made a LinkedIn post, and I just echoed it. I had her on my Navigate B2B show, and her philosophy was, hey, sign when you can, because just don't hold out, right? Don't try to keep the negotiations in limbo, right? Get the relationships that you have, build upon them. And lock into those partnerships, right? And I think that's a kind of like, when you fly an airplane, it's like stick and rudder, right? You kind of have to go with the basics. So I really like what you did in terms of getting, so you're signed, you're all set.
We're set.
That's great.
But everything it continues to evolve. So we're signed, and we're looking at maybe some incremental things, or we're looking at how do we grow our relationships on the MBO side. So in this challenging period, you can be signed, sealed, and delivered, and things continue to evolve day to day, week to week.
Let's talk a little bit about that, because I stayed out of the RFP game. In my practice, I think it does take a lot of professional time to do that. So I don't really do that unless a client is going to pay the big bucks for my thought process on that. But I think that with the NVO side and the carrier side, I've always kind of advocated professionally, like a 75-25% mix, where you have some NVOs in there to pick up the slack and to do some creative things with. I don't know if I'm delving too much into confidentiality, but are you looking? You mentioned NVOs before. Is that something that's now in play with a strategy? Just use of NVOs and direct carriers, or?
Yeah, I would say that it's been for BCOs, it just makes sense for years to be direct and not really need the NVOs because of the way the spot market has been for years. Right. There hasn't been an advantage, but we have strategic partnerships with NVOs over the years for special projects and special things going on. Stay at arm's length with them, be strategic, talk about new ports of entry with them. We feel really strong about Port of Miami and coming through here, right? We feel really good about Port of Tampa. We start to do new things. That's where NVOs can potentially help you. And then also, in a pinch, and at times where, the equipment shortages and so on and so forth, we've had to be nimble.
I love that. I think that's really one of the master strokes that my audience can take away from our session today, Michael, because I advocate that you really need to keep an open mind, with regards to new growth, and you never know where incremental volume's going to hit, or the NVO's ability to, have their tentacles reach out and buy that space and satisfy you. Or even if it's just something simple like even a potential NYSHEX contract or something that's, unique, what's going to fulfill your supply chain. But I have to ask you, as you started to look at that negotiation process, did some of the things that the Federal Maritime Commission has been looking at strongly, of course, is detention, demurrage, free time, and all those issues. Given your unique status here at the port and your infrastructure, was detention, demurrage, free time an issue in negotiations this year for you, or did it not play in so much of what the final product was?
So it's obviously something that gets revisited every year as you go through the contract. And I think what we've done and what we focused on is, years ago there was a lot of conversations about free time, per diem, all those things. What we focused on is how do we change our processes to turn our containers faster. With port, so you have congestion at the port. That's one thing, and getting the containers out of the port. And sometimes, if we have boats coming in here, massive amounts of containers, we can have issues with getting containers out. But I think the shift for us, or free time at our facility, has been how do we improve our processes, prove to the carriers that we are going to continue to speed up our turn times. And once we show them that, and we say, hey, we need free time for different purposes, but look at our track record. Sure. Our track record speaks for itself, and I think that's kind of been our strategy. And when we looked at it this year, there was conversations around that, and we just said, hey, look at what we've done, trailing 24 months, and say, why do we don't need to change these sorts of things.
What's fascinating about looking at what you've done, and you've concluded the contracts, obviously at higher rates, and I just want to delve in, I don't want to ask you anything about rates, of course, but in general, you look at somebody like, I'm going to pick a Macy's, where they have lady sweaters, a couple thousand sweaters in a container, so they go from, $2,000 to $4,000, and, the price per sweater goes up, 0.007 cents. Help me understand and help my audience understand with the increases in costs. Now, I know it's a dual-edged sword, right? You introduce a lot of interesting things at Citi. Your merchandising is premium caliber, world-class. You've got people coming in and they're buying more than they should, more than they maybe thought they would, because you've attracted them to different aspects. But as far as like the ocean freight cost component to product, is that something you can touch on? How does Citi manage that? Because it's such a large ocean increase. Yeah. I'm wondering how it works in incrementally.
Yeah, and I think that we look at it holistically, and we look at all, we're bringing in 200 containers in a given week. We look at it and say what percent of them are at spot rate versus at our contract rate, and we just worked with our carriers to try and say we locked in, like I said earlier, contracts at some lower rates. We saw, definitely an increase, and we absorb it where we can.
You hit the nail on the head. I totally get where you're coming from, as many do, right? And I think that's an important designation for the audience, that importers like Citi are doing great jobs, because their price points are through the roof on the operations. There's a lot of extra costs, and Citi, as well as many of my other clients, are doing a great job holding the fort down. So I applaud you for that. And I wanted to thank the audience for tuning in for our session today with Michael Na, the Vice President of Merchandising at Citi Furniture. Michael, it's been really extraordinary to have you here today on Navigate B2B. How do my audience and people find out more about the Citi lifestyle?
Absolutely. CitiFurniture.com is the best way to find our look at our website. All of our different categories continue to grow. New product introductions, even in this crazy time, happening every week. Follow us on social media as well at Citi Furniture.
Well, you know what, Michael? I think that after this session with FreightWaves and myself, you have a lot of new LinkedIn friends and fans coming up soon.
Absolutely.
So I want to thank you for the time today. And I want to thank my audience today. You've been watching Steve Ferreira, CEO of Ocean Audit, host of FreightWaves Navigate B2B, here on location at the Port of Miami, talking to my wonderful guest, Michael Na, Vice President of Merchandising at Citi Furniture. I'm also pleased that we'll be continuing this port series on a regular basis, And I also want to thank my audience and all my LinkedIn fans and followers for buying Quitless, The Power of Persistence. We're soon to be on USA Today top 150 bestseller. So from Miami, I'm Steve Ferreira signing off, and thanks for your time and attention. Love you all. Cheers.